It all started with fire. I was a drawing and painting major at the University of Southern Mississippi when one day I stumbled into the sculpture studio. And it was amazing. There were sparks shooting across the room, there was metal everywhere, and you could hear the roar of a blast furnace in the corner. A few minutes later, a couple of guys came out all dressed in leather and began pouring molten bronze into molds made out of sand. And I knew sculpture would be my path. I started making large-scale outdoor works, and I continued doing that through grad school. By the end of it, I had dozens of works, some in countries like Finland and Latvia. Then it was time for me to go out into the world, and it was a scary place for an artist. But with a lot of diligence, hard work, and some luck, I landed a public art commission. Now, public art was a little different from the art that I'd been doing before because there was kind of already an idea. The client knew what they wanted the art to be about. I'm thinking, this is great, because one of the largest challenges for me was deciding what idea was important enough to invest all of the energy and time and effort it took to create a large-scale work of art. That part was done. It was my task as an artist to interpret that idea and translate it into three-dimensional art. This is Linkage, a commission from the Carter Development Group in conjunction with MARTA. The goal of this work was to represent how people and communities are connected through public transit. So I designed this form with these aluminum plates that weave in and out, and these copper plates that roll up and down. So I've taken the idea of public trains and buses that weave in and out of neighborhoods and over a landscape, and I've translated that idea into this form. Public art can be a powerful tool for community pride. In fact, oftentimes community members are invited to help in the design of the project. This is Anchored Sail. Before I started designing this work for South Bend Park, I wanted to meet some people in the community because I wanted to know what was important to them about their neighborhood and why was it special. Some of the things we talked about were how people in the neighborhood were deeply rooted, and they kept using that term rooted. And so I decided to implement that into the work. I designed this intricate root system at the base of the sculpture that's interactive, and people can hang out there and climb on the work. Another thing we talked about was how the community was changing. And it was important for them to honor the history of the community as well as embrace the future. So I designed this kinetic element at the top of the work with a granite stone counterweight. That weight represents the heavy historical significance of the community. It's juxtaposed by this shining aluminum sail. The sail cut from aluminum in the shape of South Bend Park represents the bright future of the neighborhood. These two elements exist in a delicate balance, physically as well as conceptually. Let's get serious for a minute. Public art is fun. This is Spider Walk, commissioned by the City of Sandy Springs for a playable art park, a park full of interactive, climbable, playable sculpture. I was asked to design something that would be climbable, but safe and fun. So naturally, for my subject matter, I chose something terrifying. I thought it would be great to start with something that's generally considered to be really scary and present it in a way that was inviting and colorful. Sometimes I get the opportunity to spread the love of art. I had a chance to talk to some kids about my sculpture, and of course, the spider was a big hit. It's critical to expose people to art because it's a powerful tool of inspiration. It promotes open-mindedness and can dissolve the parameters of conventional thinking. Sometimes public art is used to indicate the significance, the historical significance of a place. This is a commission from the Atlanta BeltLine. Now, if you don't know the Atlanta BeltLine, it's a network of public parks, multi-use trails, and transit along a 22-mile railroad corridor that circles downtown Atlanta. The goal of this work was to create a sculpture using actual railroad steel pulled from the Atlanta BeltLine, which would symbolize the historical significance of the railroad and its impact on the development of the city. The question for me was, what's it going to look like? What form will it take? So I started digging through the history of the Atlanta Railroad, and I found this image of Union Station. Now, I'm a big fan of classical Greek and Roman architecture, so I was intrigued by this image right away. As I kept digging around, I found this picture of Union Station as it was being demolished. Now, this was a striking image for me because it was as if the architectural signature of Union Station was somehow prized. It was being allowed to survive as long as possible. So I wanted the architectural signature, that classical architectural signature of Union Station to survive through the piece. So I brought it back. This is 10,000 pounds of railroad track, spikes, anchors, and other artifacts forged in a 22-foot tall Corinthian column. Finally, the herd. This is a work of public art, but it was not a commission. I decided to make this work because I had an idea that I thought was worth sharing. I had an idea that I thought was worth the time and energy it took to create a work of art. And that idea is this. As human beings, we have a tendency to get really focused in on things like work, social culture, material stuff. And before you know it, we can't see in front of us for very far. We're like a herd of goats with our heads down to the ground, and that's all we can see. But this goat reminds us to lift our head up, look around at your world, and enjoy all of the things that it has to offer, especially art. Thank you.